everyone. Welcome to Trailblazing Tex, and my name is Brittany Metcalf, and I wanted to introduce myself and my podcast. And I've always been wanting to do a podcast, but one of my difficulties was I couldn't figure out exactly what angle or what topic I wanted to discuss. And so I always had the idea of Tex, using my nickname from college. And as we go through and talk to people, you'll learn about other nicknames that I've had growing up and throughout my life. But I wanted to use the word Tex or the name Tex within my title. And then I decided on Trailblazing Tex. I really just liked the alliteration. I didn't necessarily know what direction I wanted to take the podcast, but I always had this title in my head. And so one thing that I really started to realize was as I was talking to people, whether I was talking to college graduates or people that were about to graduate college and enter the job market, or people that have suddenly found themselves back in the job market, or just other people as I've been trying to expand my own network, I found myself having great conversations, but I started telling stories about different people over and over again. So I started to think to myself, how can I document this? Because I love telling these stories, but also just telling them over and over again, I'm not sure if I'm necessarily doing these stories justice. And so what I wanted to do then is be able to share these stories with people like you. And based on Trailblazing Tex, I soon realized that the one thing that all of these people had in common, these stories I was telling over and over again, was that these were people blazing their own trails. These were trailblazers. And so it seems that my title and my angle seemed to kind of just come together during this time of quarantine. And so me personally, now as I'm going through this process and meeting people and recording, I've come to realize that this is a little bit of my creative outlet as well. I don't sing, I don't dance, I'm not an artist by any means. If any of you have kept up with some of the competitions on Instagram between my boyfriend and I, he has won every single coloring contest. So I don't necessarily have those creative outlets. I do like to write, but I'm not the best writer, but I like to write and share stories. And so this is something that I hope benefits you all with all of the great stories that I can share, but also from my standpoint, going through quarantine and being isolated and not getting to do some of the things that we normally get to do. This is something that's my creative outlet. This is something to help me get through this time as well. But as I've gone through this, the stories I'm hearing, the people I'm meeting, I find myself so intrigued with these stories and the people that I'm meeting with and just learning more about them. And so I'm really excited to share these stories with you. So we'll have everyone on, from an engineer to a teacher to an author who's creating a children's book, to a journalist, and hopefully everything in between. And so my first thought is to share kind of more of their career or their paths, right? And a lot of these stories are overcoming obstacles and adversity, learning different lessons, and kind of taking those components and turning out at the end successful or very proud of what they have been able to achieve. So there's going to be a focus on kind of career paths and career development and how people have navigated and blazed their trails within their career. But at the same time, that's not my only focus, because we as human beings, we're well-rounded. We have more interests. We're more than just workers. We're more than just our particular career paths. And so outside of that, I want to talk about what are people's different interests, what are their hobbies, what are their passions. Some people are very fortunate to be able to work in the same field that really follows their passion. Some people don't, but they're able to follow those passions in different avenues. Maybe it's a side business they run. Maybe it's the volunteer work that they're doing. That's another thing I want to discuss, is what type of volunteer work, how are people bettering their communities, and what opportunities are there? And so I'll be talking to people that are from all different parts of the country. And so hopefully that exposes people to different opportunities to give back, to help their communities. But with that, not only how are they helping their communities, but how are they helping themselves? How are they developing as people? What are they reading? What are they watching? What do they do on a daily basis to be the best version of themselves that they can be? Different habits. Do they work out? Do they set time every single day to meditate, for example? So going into that. And then if you notice on my logo, there is a piece of pizza in my hand. And so probably some of you are wondering, well, what's that about? And so definitely we will be talking about food. And so there is a lot of different components that'll go into this podcast, but definitely want to talk about people's careers, the obstacles and adversity they've faced, but also really talk about and champion their perseverance and ending up successful on the other side of their journey. So right now, as we go through COVID-19 and we're in quarantine and we're kind of isolated from each other, I think this is a great time to hear different people's stories. I think we're all kind of seeking different connection because we're in this world that is so unfamiliar. I know me personally, I've been craving talking to other people. Certainly I can text and we have social media and I can call people, but there's something to be said about just sitting down and just having these conversations, learning from each other, how to get through this, but also to be the best versions of yourself as you can be. And so I want to connect you all with the people I'm fortunate to know, or I'm fortunate to learn to know in the future, to share the stories, because I think right now we need to hear some stories about perseverance. There's a lot of struggles going on. There's a lot of uncertainty. People are graduating college into a very rocky market. So what's next? What can they do to set themselves up for success? Like I mentioned at the beginning, there's people that have suddenly found themselves in the job market looking for jobs, and maybe they haven't for the last decade or even longer. And so what can they do to set themselves up for success and hopefully kind of create this network as well of, hey, this is someone that is in a field that I'm interested in or I'm passionate about, and this is what they did. And so kind of take that path while being inspired by one of their stories, but blazing your own trail to be as successful as possible. So after quarantine and COVID-19 finally blow over, hopefully this is something that all of you still are interested in, because like I said, I find myself very fortunate to know some of these people that, not only have great stories, but are willing to sit down with me and share. And hopefully it's something that interests you throughout quarantine, but at the end of the day, hopefully it's something that you still are wanting to tune into, because hopefully it's inspiring, you're learning, you're hearing some great stories, maybe picking up some ideas of how to better yourself, better your community, but also maybe picking up some restaurants you should be checking out in the near future. And so welcome to Trailblazing Tex.